consultants, private consultant doing consultancy in the field of innovation, government and business and government relations. Okay. And then I'm chairman of the board of East Office, which is specialized in the Russia trade.
So. I'm Petri Korhonen, the managing editor of the Sanomat business online daily, the biggest online business daily in Finland. I will be your host today, guiding you via and through this afternoon. Up there on the screens you can see the program of the afternoon. We will hear some, well, actually we will hear a lot of interesting presentations and discussions about the future of the work and all the benefits that the, well, modern society and modern work can do to us. We have a fascinating mix of high-quality speakers, thinkers and decision makers from all over the globe discussing about the topics of this issue, work and how it's done in the future. And also we have you can participate in the discussion via Twitter, also by asking questions here live, in real life, IRL, but also on a Twitter with the hashtag 2014 Millennium Prize. It's a bit long, but try to cope with that. Sorry about that. But anyway, now we are going to have some nice opening remarks from Mr. Juha Yläjäski, the CEO of the Technology Academy Finland. Welcome, Juha.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Millennium Pavilion and welcome to this seminar, The Work of Future, Future of the Work. We are proud to organize this seminar together with Aalto Future Club and the Association of Finnish Work. This pavilion, it celebrates the 10th anniversary of the Millennium Technology Prize. And yesterday we were proud to organize the festivities of the prize where Stuart Parkin was given the prize, and then we had a nice dinner in the evening also in these surroundings. And it seems to be a little bit of a windy weather, but don't be afraid, this won't fly off. But apart from the Millennium Technology Prize festivities, we have been organizing a lot of different occasions here in the Millennium Pavilion, like this interesting seminar today. We opened the pavilion on the 28th of April, and we are running program until next Wednesday, the 14th of May. And hopefully in the coming years we will come back to this setting and be able to make program for the whole month of May. We have especially had a lot of program for the youth. We had an innovation contest for primary school children. We have had a game event lasting for the whole weekend last weekend. Actually, some kids, we had some 1,500 kids all together here, and some of them actually stayed overnight here also. But today our theme is work. What's work going to be like in the future? And it's now my pleasure to call to stage editor-in-chief of Helsingin Sanomat, Riikka Venäläinen. Riikka, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Juha. Hello, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, our amazing audience. It's a pleasure to be here with you today discussing the future of work and the work of future. The topic is very, very interesting. My name is Riikka Venäläinen, and I work as the editor-in-chief of Helsingin Sanomat, which is the largest daily newspaper in Nordic countries. And we make it the next door to this Millennium Pavilion, like every day, or today you can even say like every minute. But my own work, as well as Petri's, our host's work, is in the middle of a big change because of digital transformation. The thing called newspaper is nowadays something totally else as it used to be like 10 years ago, just a piece of paper. Now it's a multi-channel content and customer service factory, really, like run by many talented people. But isn't everybody's work in the middle of big change? So that's why we are all here today, discussing the future of work. I'll be moderating the panel discussion today in the afternoon, But before the panel and coffee break, we will have an opportunity to listen to views of two most interesting persons. So, may I first present you Professor Stuart Parkin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Stuart Parkin. Let's give him a big hand.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
There's a seat for you,
Okay.
Mr. Parkin.
Where shall I sit?
Okay.
Here?
So, please sit
Okay.
down.
All right. Okay.
I can tell a few words, present you to the audience. So, Stuart Parkin is an IBM fellow. He's a consulting professor at Stanford University. He's a visiting professor at 4 other universities. He's a director of the Max Planck Institute of Microstructure Physics and Alexander von Humboldt professor at Martin Luther University, Halle-Wittenberg. And the reason why Mr. Parkin is here today is, of course, that yesterday he received the 2014 Millennium Technology Prize in recognition of his discoveries, which have enabled a 1,000-fold increase in storage capacity of magnetic disk drives. And Mr. Parkin's innovations have led to a huge expansion of data acquisition and storage capacities, which in turn have underpinned the evolution of large data centers and cloud services and social networks, music and film distribution online, and just name it. So, Mr. Parkin, maybe we can also call you the father of big data.
I think there are many fathers of big data.
But you're the one of them. Okay, once again, congratulations for the Millennium Prize.
Thank you very much.
Okay, but then, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome also our another interviewee, Mr. Esko Aho. Let's give Mr. Aho a big round of applause. Please have a seat.
Yeah, thank you.
And Esko Aho is a senior fellow at Harvard University. You're an executive chairman of East Office of Finnish Industries, and most of us Finns remember you as the former Prime Minister of Finland who led us through extremely difficult economic years in the 1990s. But let's get started.
Yeah.
Hey, please come closer if you want, because there's a lot of space here, and the discussion is always nicer if you are like closer to the people here. There are a lot of empty space. But hey, Professor Parkin, during these Millennium Technology Prize festivities, we have seen and heard how your technological innovations have greatly changed our work, our social life, and as well as our behavior. So you have envisioned that through these new computer architectures, the processing power will dramatically increase, but at the same time, the energy consumption decreases. So there will be more computation, but less energy. But what might be the social implications of these developments, and how about their implications to our work?
Well, of course, I think that will be very profound, as it has been for the last several decades as we have evolved computing systems and as they become more powerful and more capable of addressing more and more issues. But I think that society and the way we work has continually evolved, and we've been involved in transitions that have taken place perhaps on a longer time span than today, because innovation is really accelerating, and in some sense the pace of change is accelerating. And as computers become exponentially more powerful, of course they become more capable of doing and replacing much of the work that we do today. But in some sense that frees us up to do something else. So I think this can only be a good thing, but perhaps some people are nervous, a little bit nervous and worried about change, because it certainly will affect certain jobs that will no longer be necessary. And you can see in factories today that the numbers of people involved is dramatically decreasing, as we also the ability, the complexity, the capabilities of computer systems and sensor systems. It's not just individual chips, it's how we build complete systems that involve ability to sense, machines that can see and hear and take advantage and respond to the environment. And I think this is the next evolution of computers, that they're no longer objects that sit on a desk, but they really are objects that are much more involved and connected to the environment and to ourselves through interfaces that are becoming much more human-like. So I think this, of course, means that there's a huge opportunity for these computing systems to to affect our lives in even more dramatic ways. But in my mind, that just makes life much more exciting. So I don't think one should be afraid of this. I think it's just a question that this is, as our knowledge base increases and our capabilities increase, it frees us up to do even more things, and our life becomes, I think, much more fruitful and deeper when we have an opportunity to spend less time on the mechanics of work and more time on thinking and being more creative, both which of course I think enriches our own lives.
Like it will enable us to use more our human capacity, like thinking, analyzing, not just doing things.
Thinking and analyzing, and there can be more social interactions, not just with a tiny community, but much larger communities. So it's possible to have friends not just locally, but transcontinentally. And I think this is an amazing development that has taken place. You no longer need to travel to really have deep social interactions with people. You can be sitting here locally and still having friends all over the world.
This is fascinating. But Mr. Aho, how would you assess the impact of Professor Parkin's work? How have you, for example, how have Finnish companies, for example, exploited these opportunities that have been created?
When looking at digital capacities, the fact is that we are using them in a quite narrow way still. There are some applications, but I know best mobile applications because of my role at Nokia a few years ago. And recently I saw an article in the New York Times analyzing how much time we are spending with smartphones with different types of applications. Number one, 43% of time is spent for, can you guess?
Well, probably playing games.
Exactly. Playing games,
yeah.
Number one. 26% of time is spent for social networking, 10% for music and other type of entertainment. So all in all, mobile devices or smartphones are still more or less entertainment, let's say, things. And those opportunities available are huge, like you said. And I believe that the next phase is going to be when we are taking into the use of digital technologies in a massive way in manufacturing, but in major services like school, education, healthcare. But that is a major challenge because that ecosystem requirement for those services is much broader and much more complicated than it is when, for example, music services have been provided. And I think that is a challenge now. Who is able to create that ecosystem? Who is doing that? Governments? Not alone. Companies? Not even the biggest companies not do that alone. We need some kind of collaboration between business and government in order to create that kind of ecosystem. And I think this ecosystem requirement is the most critical now.
Okay, but can you mention some Finnish companies who already see these possibilities or have taken advantage of this, like big data? And
I think banking sector is a good example of a sector which has been very good using digital applications, and we are used as consumers also to do that. Healthcare is the opposite example. In spite of all these opportunities available, we are rather poor in that sector. So we have both good and bad experiences. Unfortunately, we have more weaknesses than strengths.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, but
I would like to say, I mean, I think that we're not really using these capabilities rather narrowly. I would think they've really been used rather expensively. For example, just in terms of mapping the world and being able to find out where you are and easily addressing that type of issue. I think that's a very dramatic change in our ability to find out where we are and to locate people and locate information. Information is now available, and I think the way you use these capabilities is just essentially up to individuals. So you said 43% of the time you spend in playing games. Well, people spend maybe 8 hours a day working, that's 33%, and the rest of the time they may want to be relaxed, that's 33%, then you sleep. So 33 and 43% are not so different. So perhaps if you spend 1/3 of your time on entertainment, that's just a reflection of how we operate today.
I fully agree that it's nice to have these services, but the fact is that, for example, in the field of healthcare, we are facing huge challenges everywhere in the world. This existing system is not sustainable. We know that, and now we are trying to find solutions by cutting costs, which is not going to lead to any positive conclusions. But we have capacity to do different things in a different way.
I would say I would be much more positive. I think the impact of our ability to use knowledge, it has been dramatic in healthcare, eradicating certain diseases. And I think the problem is in the wealthy countries, it's the cost of healthcare, I think you're referring to, which is increasing. But that's only because we can deal with so many more health issues that we couldn't deal with before. So I think it's just simply a question of choice as to how expansively you want to deal with healthcare, I would think. But so I would look at it extremely positively.
But think about this time span. For example, in the field of healthcare, I have a good example. We started in Finland roughly 15 years ago an effort to get electronic prescription system, because we know that it's more efficient, quality of services will be improved. And we are still in a phase that we have achieved maybe 50% level. 15 years.
No.
It's way too long. By the way, Estonians did the same within roughly 6 months. So it's telling the very important story. You can be faster or slower. You can take the benefit or you can lose that opportunity. And I believe that these nice things we are doing in the field of entertainment, they are as such good examples. But I believe that the real change in our lives is coming when we can transfer digitalization to, let's say, these hard areas like healthcare and education.
Okay, so now we have a very interesting discussion about organizations and whole industries, but how about an individual point of view? What are the key skills that will be required in the future? We are talking about work today. What is needed from an individual?
Well, I think really it's a question that today, in particular, developments require advances in science and technology very much interdisciplinary. And as our knowledge has deepened in all areas of science and the social sciences, it becomes a huge, not a difficulty, but a huge opportunity in terms of how much knowledge we have, and no one individual is capable of having deep knowledge in all of these areas. So what one needs is, at the same time, somehow to have educate people to be able to teach themselves when they don't have that knowledge, and because now it is accessible, I think, largely in the internet, because you could read books and all that knowledge is available. So I think it's more a question of educating people that yes, you have the whole of human knowledge at your fingertips. How do you decide where to find that knowledge, or how do you decide which areas of knowledge could enable you to do something very different? And so I think the way we educate today in universities is still perhaps rather siloed. You might do physics or chemistry, you might be a scientist, you may not appreciate philosophy or the arts or social sciences, but I think the natural sciences and the philosophy are not so distinct from one another. And by having some understanding of the philosophical questions, you can actually do more with the scientific developments that are taking place. So I think education then somehow needs to give people insight into how to take advantage of all that knowledge that we have. So this is more in terms of how do you find the information that is there.
So the education systems should be able to teach people how to educate themselves.
I think that's a good point.
Okay. How about Esko Aho? How would you comment this?
For the first, I fully agree that we need different types of skills and talents, and this interdisciplinarity is extremely important, because you have to be able to combine, in order to get benefits, you have to be able to combine different types of skills together, And we are used here in Finland to do committee work. We believe that everything is going to happen when all the partners and the stakeholders are in the same table. But that's not interdisciplinarity. It means that we have to create new kind of content orientation for universities and high schools, and that is a major challenge. But then another interesting aspect is that quite often we are thinking that we have two alternatives, human labor or digital, let's say, technologies. But I read recently a very interesting book called The Second Machine Age. Have you heard about that?
Yes.
It's this Icelandic guy, Brufjolfsson, and McAfee, who wrote that book. And there is one nice story. They told the story how one Nobel laureate predicted 1958 that within 10 years the best computer is able to win the world champion in chess. That did not happen 1968, not even 78 or 88. But that happened 1997 when Deep Blue, IBM's computer, won Garry Kasparov. But what happened after that? New competitions were organized, and the best computers were playing against human players with computer. And always, human player with computer has been winning. And I think the story is that, or the lesson from this is that actually we need talents where human capacities can be integrated into digital. And then we are getting something very, very essential. For example, at schools, teachers' role is not the same in the future. Teachers should be like a system integrator, being able to integrate everything in formal learning into the formal teaching at school. And again, I think that we have structural weaknesses because we are still looking at schools or the quality of school on the basis of the size of class. We are saying that if you have 28 students in a class, it's worse than if there is only 24. But that's completely nonsense. It's not relevant at all. We can create classes which are, let's say, 100,000 or 1 million in certain cases. But in certain cases we need individualized teaching so that we have only one single person in the class. But this is very difficult change, and I think the major obstacles in the field of skills and talents are that we are able to have capacities to change these traditional organizations and ways of doing things. That is the most important when thinking the future of digital technology.
I think that's a very good point, but I would say what you really are pointing to is motivation. That in some sense you have to motivate students to want to educate themselves and to appreciate the knowledge that is there and what it means. And I think that's the difficult. That's, I think, perhaps a question of why you might need to adjust class sizes. It's a question maybe a teacher can motivate students perhaps better than today's computers, but perhaps computers, as they might evolve into more robotic machines, might be able to interact better with individual children. I'm not sure. The second thing is you mentioned you need to change courses, and it seems like to me that the courses themselves should be more dynamic. An individual student could themselves define their own coursework. And it's a question of you don't really need to set a course. It's a question of how can you define a more dynamic means of creating for an individual student the courses that would better suit their own particular personality and individual traits. So I think you mentioned courses. I think that we could go away from having set courses. And I don't think that makes any sense anymore, like having physics and chemistry, but individuals could have a combination of courses involving science and social sciences and philosophy and languages, and they could determine that largely to themselves, and they could also pace the course for individual students. So I think this will be more individualization of education is becoming possible, and that's the way we should think, not in terms of static courses for an average person, but every individual could have their own course that they could dynamically develop for themselves, I would think.
Yeah, I agree, and I also agree that this motivation plays a huge role. When I was at school, in the high school, late 60s, early 70s, for example, boys were learning English much, let's say they had much more difficulties to learn English than girls. So girls were well ahead. But today, it's just the opposite. So recently, we got a study showing that boys are learning now much better. They are commanding English better than girls in the high school age. And the reason is gaming. Because they are playing these games, they are learning. They are learning by doing, and motivation is very high. But I have to ask myself, or ask the audience as well, have you seen any indication that our education system has made some conclusion on the basis of that? The only conclusion has been, nice to know. But it's not the right conclusion. We have to start thinking what to do with the formal education if and when informal education is so much more efficient. What to learn from that? How to integrate those things into our formal education? But I don't think that has yet happened in Finland.
Yeah, but so as societies, we would need much more like courage and creativity to change this all, change the education system, and how could we, what could be the tools to achieve more creativity, like changing this education system? And
I think the major problem is that the whole decision-making system in all countries, Finland included, is based on incremental improvements. So the whole mindset is that we have this existing system which is quite good. Let's improve that a bit and let's do some reforms in that so that we can reach something.
so you don't give up anything old. You just,
No, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. But if you want to create a digital school, which is not very good, let's say, name for the future school, but let's use that now. So if you want to create a digital school, you have to set the target. This is the target where we want to be, let's say, within next 10, 15 years. And then to start thinking what to do. And I think the path is different. It's different. And I hope that the Finland, in the midst of this crisis, economic crisis we are facing today, is able to do that kind of, let's say, that kind of things. To decide that, all right, we have a good education system, or we have a rather good healthcare system, but we want to be the first class country in the world in using digital technologies in a massive way in the future. And then to start thinking what we have to do today. And if you make that conclusion, for example, at schools, we are not looking at the class size. It's not very relevant in the future. But it's extremely relevant in today's discussion in Finland.
Yeah.
Perhaps I can make 2 points. One would be that if you're talking about a 10 or 15-year plan, then I think that you have to appreciate that in 10 years' time, computers are likely to be 1,000 times more powerful than today.
Yeah.
And so it's extremely difficult to anticipate what that really means. And also in terms of using digital capabilities, in 10 years' time, that means equivalently the computing today power will be 1,000 times cheaper. So I think this also so having a plan for 10 years should include noting that computers and information will be so much cheaper that you can do 1,000 times more. I think that's extremely important. And also I would say, in terms of education, perhaps you need an education system also for the parents and for the teachers. And unless you educate them, then the parents, for example, might be reluctant to embrace dramatically different educational systems from the ones that they might have experienced themselves.
Or in the opposite way, children are able to educate their parents. I've seen that to happen in my own family.
Yeah. Absolutely.
With me.
Yeah. Okay, but let's move back from the education back to work. How about time management from an individual's point of view? Because already now, today, many of us work almost 24 hours, like 7 days a week for various reasons. And work life and private life are happily or sometimes unhappily mixed. But what will happen in the future in this time management?
Well, I must admit, I'm very bad at managing my own time, so I'm really not the right person to address that question. But I think, it depends. I think work and not work, there's a the difference may not be so great. I mean, what do you want to spend your life doing? For me, doing science and thinking about new technologies, that is all-consuming because I'm not sure there's something else that I would rather do. So I'm not sure I would wish to spend less time, in some sense, working, because working is so much fun. So I think that's the opportunity, because as machines can take over more of the mundane aspects of work, it frees one up to have more exciting work, in my mind, in which one can enjoy it more, and then the boundary between work and not working, I think, will be eliminated. Because essentially, all the time, one can be doing something that is not only creative, but it's fun, and I would think, in the best of all worlds.
Yeah. How about Mr. Aho? How would you comment?
I think it's very important to see how dramatic changes have happened during our lifetime. I was born in 1954, 60 years ago. And I was born in rural Finland. 50% of our population, or labor force, was employed by agriculture and forestry. The rest, most of them were doing rather tough industrial work or construction work. So the fact is that physical work has changed in a dramatic way within one generation or two. And people are saying now that if we are going to lose 1/3 of our jobs by 2030, it's going to be a disaster. We lost 1/3 of our jobs between 1955 and 1975. For sure it was tough, but it was not a disaster. It was improvement of our life. So I fully agree that it's a great opportunity to create new type of working life, where for sure borderline between work and leisure time is going to be very, very, let's say, invisible or like a line drawn into the water. So it's we have to understand that working life in that sense is going to face rather huge challenges, but it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, but what kind of work will there be left, especially in manufacturing? Because not of all have a university degree, and not all of us can make a living on service sector or something else. What kind of work will there be left?
Well, I think just as you mentioned, we used to be a almost purely agricultural society, and 1%, I think, or I'm not sure, 1 or 2% of the population or working population in the United States now can do agriculture and provide the food for 300 million people and beyond. And similarly, the numbers of jobs in manufacturing is in steep decline. It's, I think, 11% in the United States. It was much higher just a generation ago. So, but that means that we have basically developed other activities for people in the healthcare, looking after people, being able to deal more with health issues. Lifespan has somewhat been extended. So I think that there's always, it's a question again, what do you mean by work? But I guess I think by freeing us up from all these in some sense more labor-intensive, maybe repetitive tasks, if one can eliminate those, you can then do all sorts of other things. You can be more creative, I think. I'm not sure what exactly those jobs will be, but it's clear that as we have become capable of replacing much of what we do with machines, thinking and operating machines, this has meant we're busy doing other things. As you said, we're 24 hours a day busy in social interactions, so there seems to be no limit to how work, being able to create more work. It would be very nice to eliminate all work. Like, I think the 24 hours a day, we spend so much time on unimportant matters that could be eliminated.
Okay, thank you. But now, ladies and gentlemen, our time is running, and Professor Parkin has a plane to catch.
Oh, okay.
So it's time to thank Mr. Stuart Parkin and Mr. Esko Aho for the interview.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your valuable contribution, and let's give a big hand for
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
two
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Okay, very nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Okay,
Kiitoksia.
thank you. Very
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you.
Kiitos paljon.